Hello and welcome to TK24 Sports. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be looking at the start of the new Premier League season, which way those results have actually gone, and the results that have stood out to us, and those are the games we'll be talking about today. So let's get right into it. Now, the first game on the agenda is going to be Watford versus Brighton. And why did we pick this game out? This game was done on the opening weekend, and of course Watford was supposed to win this game comfortably against a Brighton team that should not even be in the same vicinity as Watford, because Watford are a good team, and I'm sure you know that as well. But believe it or not, Watford lost, Brighton won 3-0. I am very surprised. Now, if you just look at the stats of this game, it tells the reason why Watford didn't show up at all. First of all, I'm not a stats guy. I don't really like the stats. I like watching a game, but sometimes you miss things in a game that the stats just tell you afterwards as to why this game went the way it did, and sometimes it doesn't. But hey, let's get into it. Look at the possession. Watford 48 and then Brighton 51.8 of the possession. So Watford didn't even have the ball, and they was the home team, and that is very surprising because Brighton last year was just not a great team. Now, they did make some changes to their personnel, of course, getting rid of their manager, bringing in a new one, and it looks like they're trying to play a new brand of football, which is not a bad thing. But to me, again, Brighton just should not have won this game. I'm taking nothing away from Brighton at all whatsoever, but they should not have won this game. Look at the shots on target. 3 for Watford, 3 for Brighton. On the shots in total, 11 for Watford, 5 for Brighton. But the damning thing about this, the 3 shots on goal that Brighton done, they actually scored. Yes, one of them was an own goal, but they still scored all 3 goals, and Watford was just wasteful in front of goal. If you look at the touches, 602 to 637. Look at the passes, 414 to 442. Look at the tackles, 12 to 24. Look at the clearances, 10 to 24. So all that being said, it just goes to show that Brighton showed up on the day. They wanted it more. They didn't want to go down with a humiliating score on the first game of the season. Now, don't get me wrong, Brighton haven't done anything since then, but neither has Watford. But at least Brighton have 3 points on the board, and Watford have 0 after 3 games. And to me, that is just one of the worst things that can ever happen to any team starting off a new season. Play 3 games and not even coming away with a point, 2 points, 3 points, just any point at all whatsoever. And I think Watford could be in deep trouble if they do not sort this out very soon. The next game to me that stood out as well was, of course, the Villa and Everton game. Why? Villa just been promoted. Just about to get this game up just here. Villa just been promoted back into the Premier League after a few years absence. Everton, bearing in mind, they have actually spent some money. They have spent big money, and even big money this season. They have game changers in their team. Villa put a whole new team together. If you think of the amount of money they spent with the personnel coming in, really and truly, they should not have won this game, and Everton should have won this very, very comfortably. But wrong. Yet again, another big upset. And why? Let's get into it. Look at the possession. Who's the home team, who's the away team? Of course, Everton's the away team, but Villa let Everton have the ball. 35% to 64.8% of the possession. And as we all know in football, possession doesn't mean anything these days. It's all about what you do when you don't have the ball, let alone when you do have the ball. Shots on target, 3-1 to Everton. Maybe that's why they can't score goals yet. Look at the shots, 7 to 12. So even though Everton had more shots at goal, they clearly just was more wasteful at those chances. And the biggest one, I think, was, if you think about it, was the Theo Walcott chance. Pretty much an open goal, and he just laced it wide. It was embarrassing. It was. Maybe that's the reason why he is on the bench. Look at the touches, 503 to 727. Look at the passes, 301 to 539. Look at the tackles, 12 to 16. Look at the clearances. Villa clearly was always under pressure, 25 to 7. So the game was always in Villa's half. But yet again, Everton was just too wasteful, and they didn't do anything when they had the ball. And that's something Marco Silva's going to have to do. He's going to have to rectify this very quickly. After this weekend coming up, I'm very sure these are the things with him and his coaching team are just going to have to look at the next up-and-coming fixtures and think, what do we have to do to actually improve? Because the amount of money they spent this season and last season, there should be no excuse to losing to Aston Villa, and yet again, there is no disrespect to them. They have done okay since they've come back. They held Tottenham very well up until, of course, Eriksen came on, and then they eventually lost that game 3-1. But I'm just saying to you, Everton should have went there and literally obliterated Aston Villa, but they didn't, and Villa showed true guts and determination, and they came away with the eventual win. So Everton, work on your attack, literally work on it. You've got Moses Kane there, you just brought him in from Juventus. What are you doing? Why is he still on the bench? He has to be started. You've got to start Iwobi, you've got Richarlison, yes, you've got Sigurdsson, you still got Walker. You're going to have to get a formation that's going to work and make it complement the assets that you have around. And that's down to Marco Silva more than anyone else. Now moving on to the next game that stood out to me, and that would be, of course, the Man United and the Chelsea game. Why? Yes, we're going back a bit to the opening game of the season, the first weekend. But even though United won 4-0, to me it was not a 4-0 convincing win. I watched the game, I watched it with close eyes, and the stats told me exactly what the game told me. United got lucky. To me, they got lucky in all their 4 goals. Yes, there was a bit of genius in play for Rashford's second goal, with the ball over the top from Pogba. Beautiful pass, but mind you. But then let's look at the stats. You know, this is Lampard's first real competitive game, and the way he put his team out, I was impressed. I was impressed the way Chelsea played. I was impressed with the youth. I think Mason Mount's going to be a very good player. He could be the one to replace the goals from midfield that Lampard left behind. I'm not talking about what Hazard does, because they've got another player that plays out wide that can do that. I'm talking about Mason Mount. He looks really good. Tammy Abraham looked a bit out of depth for me in this game. I thought he may have come a bit too soon. He didn't look like a striker, in my opinion. But then, since then, he has bounced back and he scored a couple of goals. But for me, the telling signs was for United. And it really was. Chelsea was carving them apart. On the left-hand side, they kept him open every single time. Luke Shaw was nowhere to be found. He didn't have much cover. And Chelsea were just a bit wasteful. And this is what I'm talking about. Let's look at the stats, shall we? United's a home team, but they gave up 46%. They only had 46% of the ball, and Chelsea had 53%. You say that's very close? It's not, because let's go a bit deeper. Look at the shots before the shots on goal. Chelsea had 18. United have 11. The shots on target, 7 versus the 5. Look at the touches. This is embarrassing for United. If you're a United fan, or even if you're a Solskjaer, you should look at yourself and say, what are we doing? What is the philosophy here? 730 to 649. Passes, 523 versus 449. The tackles, 21 versus 16. Clearances, United had to keep on clearing the ball. Well done to that, and they did do it. But they still got lucky, because Chelsea did have some chances. They hit the post. And like I said, if Tammy Abrahams had a bit more about him, and he just thought, you know what, this ball's going to come right across the box like it did. And if he just had those instincts, he would have been there ready and waiting on the 6-yard box, quick tapping. It could have been another game. But that's like everything in football. It can always be what if, what if, what if. You just have to do it and then see what happens after that. So my conclusion from that game, more than anything else, was United got lucky. They got really lucky. And that's been proven, because, of course, they drew then against Wolves, and then they lost at home to Palace. Where Chelsea, on the other hand, they drew at Leicester at home, then they went away to Norwich and just about won 3-2. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't a comfortable win at 3-2, and well done to Norwich pushing them all the way. And Pookie's on fire. This guy is dangerous. I'm not going to get carried away with Pookie, but he looks dangerous. But at least Chelsea done something. Mason Mount scored again, and then Tammy Abraham scored 2 goals in that game. And it was, in the end, a great, great victory. But I'm just saying, if you look at both of the teams between Chelsea and United, people started rating Chelsea off and thinking United were, that team, they've done it. They've signed Harry Maguire, they've signed Wan-Bissaka. Oh my God, United have done it. They've done something that Arsenal couldn't do. But then look at the difference. It doesn't matter if you spend 85 million or 50 million on those players. It doesn't mean it's going to be a successful transition for them. Where Chelsea couldn't sign anyone, but they did have some signings come back, which were the players that were on loan. And to me, that is a breath of fresh air. It's youth. It's what Chelsea needed. And I do believe Frank Lampard's going to do something special with Chelsea, rather than what Ole Solskjaer's going to do with United. So moving on, and the final game that caught my eye so far of this Premier League season had to be the big shock of all the shocks, really, which was Spurs versus Newcastle. And no, I'm not a Spurs hater. I'm just saying this was embarrassing on every level. Again, when you look at the results of it, you've given Newcastle a prayer. You pretty much would have put your house on the line just to get a small return of profit if you thought Spurs was not going to win this game. You would have thought Spurs going into this game was definitely going to win it. But that did not happen. And this is why. The creativity in Spurs is gone. Eriksen's on the bench, and I don't know what Pochettino's doing. You know, with the defenders, they can chop and change, and that's not a big deal. But to me, the creativity and the most creative person is, of course, Eriksen. Now, Dele Alli is missing because, of course, he's injured, but he's not the creative one. He just bounces off the goals from Harry Kane through a few flick-ons. And that's no disrespect to Dele Alli. I think he's got more than that in his arsenal of a game. I just feel that Eriksen is their talisman. He's the one that can pick out from deep. He's the one that can pick out in the centre, and he can start spraying those balls around. But while you've got your one creativity player on the bench, this is what happens. It happened against Villa, and it's happened here again. And again, let's look at the stats. This tells you all. This tells you why Tottenham didn't win the game. Yes, they had 80.2% of possession of the ball compared to the 19.8%, but let's look at the shots. They had 17 shots versus Newcastle's 8. But 2 of them only hit the target for Spurs, whereas Newcastle had 3 shots on target. So Spurs were very woeful, no creativity. They didn't know what to do when they actually got the ball, and it was hit and hope, hit and hope, hit and hope. Bearing in mind, Lucas had that great chance when the ball came across, and he just hit it high and wide. And then when Harry Kane finally got the chance, he fluffed his lines and just scuffed the shot, and it went to nowhere really. But then look at the touches. 942 versus 391, 763 versus 190 of passes. Steve Bruce, you've got to do much more with your team. And one thing I took from that game with Steve Bruce's approach was he went 1-0 up at half time. It was a great goal. It's a fantastic goal. Brilliant goal. But if Steve Bruce is going to play this sort of football for Newcastle, you might as well go now, Steve Bruce. Yes, it was a great win. But there's no way you play football the way you just played. And it was embarrassing to watch the second half. You sit back, soak up the pressure, hoping you was going to come out alive. And you're lucky you did. You really are lucky, Steve Bruce, that you came out of this alive and managed to get 3 points in your first 3 points of the season. So well done to you. But you can't keep playing this way against every team. You go 1-0 up, second half, to play a bit of a counter-attack. You've only got your 5 guys in defence, great. Your 4 in the midfield, great. And then the 1 up front. At least make the 4 a bit more flexible so they can go forward and back, a bit of back box-to-box, midfield sort of thing. And your 5 guys at the back will stay back. You don't need your 4 backs to go forward, bombing forward away from home, let alone at home. You just have to be more offensive, Steve Bruce. And if you can do that, then they may just warm to you as they did to Rafa Benitez. But anyway, back to Spurs. Why did Spurs not win this game? Well, that's because they was very wasteful. And they were woeful in front of goal, and they was woeful creating goals. No one knows what's going to happen with Eriksen just yet. But I think he may be going. And if he does go, any team will be crazy right now to spend more than 30 million on this guy. Why? Because you can do one or two things. You can go to Spurs and say, I'll give you 25 million, take it or leave it. They can say, oh, well, we're going to leave it. Then that opens up for Eriksen to negotiate a new contract with another team come January. That means that signing on fee that they could have given as a transfer fee to Spurs, they can mostly give it to Eriksen or even at half the price. So let's say 25 million or 20 million. You can give him 10 million, shall I say. You can give a nice sign-on fee at 10 million and then give him the wages he wants because it's still going to be cheaper to do it that way. So Spurs are really in a predicament, and good luck playing Arsenal this weekend when you're going to be facing potentially Lacazette, Aubameyang, Pepe, Ceballos, Willock, and then along with that, Torreira in the midfield if Emery is that bold and brave, considering what he done against Liverpool. So anyway, these are the games that stood out to us on the opening 3 weeks of this season. And so much more is going to happen for this up-and-coming fixtures this weekend. And then you've got the international break. And then I can't wait till that's actually over so we can get back into the Premier League again. Well, thank you for watching today for TK24 Sports. We'll see you really soon. Goodbye. Hello and welcome to TK24 Sports. Thank you for watching us on YouTube. Be sure to press that subscribe and like button and press that notification button as well so you do not miss another show. Once again, thank you for watching TK24 Sports on YouTube.